This video is going to be a little bit different. I'll be answering the most asked question on the Wild Journeys channel by running through what camera equipment I use. From there, I'll be taking you through to the bush with me on my most recent trip to Kruger National Park. I'll kind of just show you how I go about things, some thoughts, observations, go through some challenges that arise, how we attempt to overcome them. The camera's really struggling. From there, we'll head back here where I'll run through a little bit of editing with you. I love that. Why I edit in a certain way and a little bit how. I have only been recording videos like this for about 7 months or so now, so I am still learning every single day. Oh no, where's my lens cap? This is definitely not any kind of tutorial or how-to video. It's just a look at how I do things. If you can gain something from that, then that's a bonus. I hope you enjoy. So let's move straight onto the equipment. When you eat the most delicious cake in the world, no one asks what oven the baker used to bake it in. Just the thought. Camera body. I am using the Canon R6. I'm shooting mostly in 4K at 60 frames per second. If there is a shot that I want to slow down, I can slow it down by 50% and still have it at 30 frames per second, which is what you are watching these YouTube videos at. Another thing I love about this is the eye tracking, so it will keep focus on the subject's eyes. So that includes people and animals and birds. This camera tends to overheat. When I was in Mapungubwe, I was filming the elephants from the bird hide. They just keep coming. For quite a long time because it was just chaos happening around me. It was so cool. My camera's overheated, and I had to put the camera down for like 5 minutes and all this action was happening around me. Had to pick up the phone. It worked out very well in the end, but I wouldn't want that happening in the most epic sighting ever. I'm just imagining like you filming this crazy lion hunt and they're like fighting with a buffalo or something, and as it gets to the peak of the scene, the camera overheats. Like, I would be so bummed. Because I come from a photographic background, I film in a very similar way to how I would shoot photographs. So I'm just making sure the ISO is as low as possible to avoid noise while keeping my exposure as high as possible to get a smooth image. For most of the time I'll keep the aperture as wide open as possible. In this lens it would be f2.8. The way I look at it is when I'm taking a video, the only thing that's really happening is I'm taking 60 photographs per second. Let's say I'm filming these banded mongoose. I kind of set up the frame the way I think it looks nice and pleasing to the eye, but this time it's just taking constant photographs, putting it together into a video. I think what you do need is maybe just like an eye for a frame, and to be able to know your subjects well enough to know what they might do next and realize what they are doing, why they are doing it, where they might move next, what kind of interaction might take place, and then you can frame accordingly. So again, similar to photography. What we have attached on here is the Canon 70-200 f2.8. It's the Mark III. It's my baby. The only thing that would make me take this lens off is the fact that it stops at 200 millimeters. So that brings me to this lens, the Canon RF 100-500. So this lens is made for mirrorless cameras. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's just a longer lens. So I mean, right now it's 7:15. The light is very harsh already. So at this point, I might as well switch over to the longer lens. There's no need for that super wide open aperture to let in all that light. Very small depth of field is not totally necessary. I'd rather actually get the frame that I want and not have to crop it later on. And the third lens, which I use by far the least, is the 16-35 millimeter. It is also f2.8, so it performs very well in low light, which is great because I use this mostly around camp. The microphone that I am using, the Rhode VideoMic Go II. It does struggle with wind even with this thing on. Any little light breeze on this microphone and it's just... and I have to EQ that out if I want to attempt to use the sound that I've captured. Also a lot of white noise, which I have to also EQ out on the high end. And then I end up with a very narrow looking audio file, if that makes sense. One arm and a leg at a time. The other thing I use is the DJI Action 3, which is recording right now. with the DJI Wireless Microphone. It's basically like a GoPro action camera and it does everything perfectly for me. It's perfect for time lapses as well as capturing some B-roll of like driving around, as well as me just chatting away in the car, and for something like this right now. Glad that's all done. Now that that's out the way, let's get straight into the filming process before I take you to the bush with me. From there we'll come back and do some editing together. So I'm sat here in Johannesburg. Tomorrow I head down to Kruger National Park for the next wild journey. I have already begun filming. I got a little bit of a creative spark to get working on a bit of an intro for this video, and I don't think, well, I'm not sure if it's going to be used or not, but it's kind of based around telling a story from journaling, and I've begun recording that. And I've just written what was coming to my mind. There's this quote that I've been thinking about a lot that focuses around feeling a loss of wildness and that restlessness that comes with it, and I've definitely been feeling that over the last few weeks. You can't really script a story on these kinds of videos because things always tend to just unfold in a completely different way. So the story is there, we're going to go into the story, it's going to unfold the way it needs to. I like to think that I just need to be present and aware enough to be able to recognize when a story is developing and then start documenting that and getting creative with that. We have arrived. The first afternoon was beautiful and everything was just going smoothly. The next morning started on a high with lions, but I soon ran into a new challenge. That's just ridiculous. It's the very first time that I've actually maxed out a memory card and a battery, all within the first 2 hours of the day. I took a bit of a risk on this trip to start filming in a different video format, a C-Log. So what this does is it gives these video files a lot more dynamic range and allows you to have more freedom in the editing process when it comes to color grading. It's a risk because you have to expose it differently. It's a different way of shooting video, which I've never really done before, and you don't really know what it's going to come out like until you get to the editing process. But I've very quickly realized that with just 2 batteries and 2 memory cards, it's just not going to work. So had a lovely sighting with lion cubs this morning, and even then I was stressing a bit. It was just freaking me out. I didn't know if the footage was going to be coming out alright, and then my memory card was full and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Like midway through a sighting. So luckily I got the laptop in the car with me. It's quite windy and overcast, which also means it's just been a bit of a mission with the sun coming out, then going behind the clouds, and I don't know if I'm exposing the video in the correct way. This definitely contributed to some negative thinking. Although this felt a bit cringy to document, it helped me at the time, and I've learned that it's always better to film way more than what's necessary, just in case something becomes a part of the story. I don't know, you are incompetent at what you are doing here, and it won't keep quiet. I'm just trying to kind of let you into my world, and in this case it really did. In fact, it becomes a recurring theme throughout this whole process. There's this beautiful moment of reunion. That is my dream sighting right now. Okay, 3 lionesses walking down the road straight towards me. I'm gonna give them lots of space to walk into. What I'm hoping is that they've fetched them and these lionesses turn around and walk straight towards me. And that's exactly what they're doing. My camera's really struggling, not enjoying that. This really wasn't ideal, but the beautiful experience of just being here has to remain my priority before creating any video. Otherwise, what's the point? That just happened. That just happened. The only thing left to do is watch this beautiful sunset. So just to let you in on what I've done so far today, what I'll usually do is wake up, obviously have a quick shower and make a coffee, and while I'm drinking my coffee I like to get 1 or 2 shots of the light starting to appear, just to tell the story of it being an early morning. And often the morning chorus is going, so all the birds are starting to chirp. It's just a beautiful thing to hear, so it's also quite nice to try capture that. Excuse my squeaky clutch. And to actually capture the sun rising is quite important, just to kind of set the tone that it's a new day, it's a new start. All these little things add up to a story, you know, and I'm still learning. There's often times I forget to film something like that, something that seems so obvious. I see someone's just stopped ahead of me, so maybe there's something going on here. Martial eagle has just landed here. There's something in the grass here. What you're hearing here are mongoose, and there's a martial eagle in the tree here trying to hunt them. So that pretty cool sighting is the perfect example of why I like to have the longer lens on during the day. It just would not have been the same with the 70-200, as much as I love that lens. Yeah, dude, just make yourself at home there. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea, some biltong? A kind gentleman just told me that the rest of the Pride is just another kilometer down the road. So that's where that first lioness comes from. Apparently there's a lot of cars there, but I'm just going to go see what's happening as these lions have just kind of settled down for the time being. That guy was definitely right about the chaos with the cars, but I find that often in those situations it's good to just kind of hang back, don't get involved in the chaos, and let things unfold from there. And very often things kind of just work out very nicely if you're willing to be a little bit patient. In those situations, from a filming point of view, I'm not a fan of having cars in the background and all that. It just doesn't look cool. So what I did there very intentionally was go right in tight on the lions' faces while they were walking towards me, and there was a bit of eye contact, and it actually ended up being a pretty epic scene. I'm just gonna continue on because it is getting more and more chaotic there. They're probably going to meet up and it might be a good sighting, but I just have a feeling it'll be a bit stressful. So it's like, pick your battles, you know. It's nice to just leave on a good note. This Canon R6 did really struggle to hold focus on the subject the other day when I had the lions walking towards me, and I think I know now why, because it didn't struggle now. Today it was perfectly fine because I think it could see the eyes quite nicely. The light is quite it's quite flat, it's overcast, whereas the other day the sun was behind those lions. Even though I could see a lot of detail in the lions' faces through the viewfinder, I think the actual camera and the sensor was struggling to pick up those eyes. It was a little bit more of a silhouette. Just another thing I've learned, like, okay, don't rely too much on eye tracking when your subject is backlit. Like halfway through this episode, and I have to go into town to go to a pharmacy, and it's just not ideal. The thing is with this channel is I'm trying to document the highs and lows, everything. I don't want to leave anything out. I want to keep things chronological and keep it as authentic as possible. So I am documenting this part of things. People are here to see wildlife. They are here to see the experience of the bush, not the experience of going to town. You can see the DJI Action camera there taking a hyperlapse of me driving to Hoedspruit, which I think will come out pretty cool because there's clouds in the sky. It's just like a straight road for most of the way with trees going by. Instead of me just talking nonsense on camera all the time like I am right now, a lot can be told in one like 5-second video clip. Let's get back to the bush. Just a quick one. I want to mention that the Wild Journeys website is now live. For now, it's primarily a place where you can bring a piece of wild into your home or your office with high quality prints. Worldwide shipping is completely free at the moment, so why not take advantage of that? Go to wildjourneys.com to have a look and get some more info. Otherwise, links are down below. Let's get back to it. I really enjoy shots that are naturally framed by a bit of foliage in the foreground. I feel like it just gives you the sense of being there in the moment. It feels like it's actually you watching through the bushes. Let's be honest, that's not a good looking bird. Well, got the short end of the stick when it comes to aesthetics. Time for a battery change in this camera, so I'm gonna switch you off now. You'll notice that I sometimes use the DJI wireless microphone and sometimes I don't, and there's a very honest and simple explanation for that, and it comes down to me being lazy. I should be using it a lot more because the sound quality is a lot better than the onboard mic on this camera, but I don't know, man, I feel like it just annoys me and it just feels tedious. I had to make this out of sunglasses strap.
Hello birdies, we've come to take the photographs of you, if you don't mind. Why am I talking like this? Maybe the road is bumping me brain to pieces. Maybe I'm just crazy. I had plans to zigzag south from Satara today, but as I got to the gate, there were about 15 cars all lined up waiting for the gate to open, and I think at least about 12 of them turned right to go south as well. So I decided, nope, no ways, we are then going left. So what the plan is, at least for the beginning of this morning, is to do the Gudzani loop. So the inspiration for doing this route at the last minute comes from an app called Kruger Explorer. I enjoy the app so much that I do want to recommend it. So especially if you're a first timer or you don't come to the park too much and you don't know it too well, want to get some route ideas, some interesting information, then Kruger Explorer is definitely a handy tool to have. Apart from routes and really high definition maps, they also have good information on the history of the park, the eco zones, what to expect to see in certain areas, and quite a lot more. So I highly recommend having that in your toolkit. So obviously every drive can be very hit or miss. You can see everything in 1 hour, or you can see absolutely nothing for like 4 hours. There's usually at least some general game around, like impalas and the odd zebra, etc. I don't want to just have a 40-minute episode of giraffes and zebras, and they aren't exactly the most photographic shots either. They're more like just there to show what I'm seeing. So it feels like I'm hardly filming anymore, and I'm just driving around kind of hoping for something unique to happen, something out of the ordinary. And you know what, sometimes that just doesn't happen. Ooh, it's 444. That's easily where a little bit of self-doubt can creep in. It's like, oh, what am I doing? Oh, am I looking hard enough? I've just got to remind myself that that's just the way it goes out here. You can't plan anything. You gotta just try to keep it as honest as possible. There's always that like strange bit of pressure, and it comes from myself. But I do know that without anything unique and special like a cat or a special bird or just a really beautiful scene and nice golden light, people will start to lose interest throughout the video and eventually click away like 20 minutes in. So I'm very aware of that, and there's not much you can do about it except for just tell the story for what the story is.
Unfortunately, it was time to go home. I'm taking you with me to share some thoughts while editing, but again, this is not a tutorial, it's just my process at the moment. Today was a long day, but we made it home, got back to no water, just another day in Joburg. 531 gigabytes of video footage. I always record way too much and end up using only like a quarter or a third of it at the most. That's the process I'm going to be starting with. In Final Cut Pro, I'll bring it all into the timeline and just start snipping. Just start cutting away. Don't want that there, don't want that there, I'll keep that, don't want that there. And at the same time, I'll be getting a little bit of an idea of what kind of footage I actually have, how the footage came out, and usually by the end of that process, which can sometimes take like even up to a day, I'm not even joking. At least then when I do start actually editing and putting this story together, I'll know what's coming up later on, what the flow can be into certain sections of the video. But does that make sense? I don't know. Let's get started. This is going to be fun. Day 4 of editing. I'm trying very hard not to fall into the trap of, and I've done this before, of using the same music in different videos all the time. But I'm trying to lean into a little bit more of like a cinematic piano style of music without making it too like melancholic and almost like sad. So after this very first lion sequence with this like very beautiful female vocal song, then I'd want to follow that up with something a little bit more uplifting and energetic. Something a bit more epic. After that, you know what I searched? I searched Moby. You know the song Porcelain by Moby. It matches with the theme of a lot of things going on in nature and like has this world vibe about it. So you can see how I'm trying to make it or keep it dynamic. Once I actually have a bit of a story that's cohesive and flowing a little bit better, then I will start listening to the audio more closely and EQing, fading and fading in certain things at the right time, getting the levels right, and then right at the end get onto the color grading. It's been like a week of editing and this video is pretty much all but done. I have this intro. Ian McCallum once wrote that a loss of wildness and a loss of soul are the same thing. Or the shape and shade of the umbrella thorn tree will know that restlessness. That part. So there were controlled fires in the Kruger, and I thought including that there with the crackling could represent a burning desire to go back home to the Kruger. We can have more of a flash forward, some of the best shots like a do-do-do-do, Okay, let's get to it. So I get my music and sound effects from Artlist. I have this sound effect that I used in a previous video that I'd like to use again. So I'm just gonna go to my download history here and try find it. This is the effect I like. So let's bring that in. Okay, so I think I've got the timing down. Check this out.
Restlessness.
But that silence there, I want to put a little bit of like a sand sound effect for that elephant. I don't use sound effects for animals like much at all. I don't like to, but I think for this little part, it's going to be very cool. Let's find something. Let's find something together. Back to Artlist. Let me just search sand. Okay, we are not in a windy desert. Let's search sand throw. That's not going to work. Earthy debris, sand scatter. We might be onto something. I like the end of that. This part.
That restlessness.
I love that. Does that even need to be EQ'd? Let's check it out. We'll loop that by pressing the question mark.
I've become rid. I've become rid. I've become rid. I've become rid.
I'm going to keep the EQ low like that because it's a little bit more subtle. And I think sometimes less is more. It's already a bit much of that whole
Umbrella thorn tree will know that restlessness. I've become restless.
This is a good opportunity to show you what this footage looked like before color grading it. Let's go through it. That's what it looks like out of the camera. Very flat, almost like hazy, not much contrast or color at all. What we do then is we put on a LUT, which is a lookup table. You can download these online. So it brings it back to a more contrasted, more natural look already. So there it is there. And the reason why I'm recording in C-Log is so that I have dynamic range to play with if I want to change things. Then I added another thing here called the color curves, which is just, all I've actually really done here is raise the highlights a little bit. So it's just giving that little bit of extra contrast. And another color wheel where we raised the highlights a lot and brought down shadows a bit more as well. And light. Before and after. Here's another example of a before and after. Pretty crazy, yeah? This here was actually filmed with my iPhone. Obviously, you can see in the mirror there. And you know what? Phones these days are so good. If there's a moment, I can't capture this on my 100 to 500 millimeter lens. You know, it's just not going to work. And if I do get like an eye or something, it's just going to be so shaky and all over the place. It's not going to be cool. This part here, when I'm talking about my dream sighting, I hope that this happens. Hardy Dars. Welcome to Johannesburg. I had this very cool feeling that the adult lions were going to meet up with the cubs and it's going to be a special moment. I just need to be in the right place at the right time, and it happened. And in that moment, I had the idea of telling a little bit of a backstory of why I have this connection with the specific pride and the white lions and the area in general. I'm glad I did because it worked well going into that little segment. So I had to then record a let me tell you why.
Let me tell you why.
And we go into this little quick story. So that was like on the spot, like, oh, if this happens, then it would be nice to have that little story before it happens. My camera was really struggling to focus. That's why there's a few different cuts here and it doesn't continue. Like that shot I would have loved to just keep going, but it goes out of focus. Check this out. Oh, and the cub was stretching there. It wasn't meant to be, you know. And eventually I just stopped recording and started a new clip, and this was that clip here. So recording at night is so difficult, especially on your own and especially in a campsite. So you need your own lighting, which I obviously don't really have, but at least that's telling the real story, that I'm just using my headlamp thing, the red light. this clip here. Often it's both. There's a flickering with that light. The camera settings aren't matching up to the frequency of the light, just to put it very simply. I'm not going to go into depth. But anyways, that's something I'll fix in the future. It's just some settings in the camera. You know what, recording in a campsite's also weird because sometimes if you have neighbors and stuff, it's just a bit weird recording yourself and chatting to nobody when people are watching you, or not watching you, but they can see you like doing this and they're like, what's this like doing? I liked the idea of having like just a piano note playing for the change of a scene. It's like very abrupt, but it's also like very simple and beautiful. So the truth weighs nothing. These maps are just recorded with my iPhone. I put this map on my bed, record in good light, recorded me just showing where I'm going on the video, slowed it down and put it in. Very easy process. For most of the way, and then we'll take it from there. Probably head to Satara. And I like the idea of doing that because it's like the real map that I'm using, and you see it's actually like, look, here we are looking at the map together, you know? This black mamba shot would have been so epic. I'm sure that was a decent sized black mamba. So you can kind of guess what happened there. I was driving along after that mongoose sighting or something, and yeah, I saw this black mamba just pop out of the grass onto the road in front of me. It lifted its head right up, like quite high up, and looked at me, stopped. Oh my gosh, quickly switched off. Thought I hit record, and it like went down and quickly crossed the road, and you could almost like hear it. It was such a big black mamba. And I was like, yo, that's such a cool shot. Put my camera down, and when I thought I pressed stop, that was actually then starting the recording. And I put my camera down on my lap, and it just recorded my camera bag next to me. So I decided to just include that I missed the shot and make it a part of the story. It lands on me. And why was that mamba not meant to be filmed? These patterns of interconnection feel easier to notice in the savannah. This was the lion sighting when there were actually a lot more cars than what it looks like here. And I'm very glad that I was forced to make that decision, because this shot is like the hero shot of the video, or one of the hero shots of the video. The lion looking dead on into the lens while walking straight towards me with a clean background. Just realizing a mistake. That's why I'm pulling a face. Can you see that light circle in the middle of the video? You can see when her head moves from left to right, how the light stays in the center of the screen, and she's moving in and out of that light. So I added that to lighten up her face, and I didn't make it subtle enough. Yeah, that one. Check that out. Okay, so that's on and off. What I did was this shape mask, and ideally what I should have done is make it blend out towards the sides of the screen a lot more, not make it so tight and noticeable. So that would have been a lot less noticeable. Let's check it on and off. Yeah, I thought this was quite cool. It also became a little bit like editing a photo. So we added the LUT, did some color curves and gave it some pop. Then what I did was add a couple of shape masks again. So we added some light coming in from the top right, which it kind of was already. So I try to follow where the lights and shadows are already and then just accentuate them. And added some shadows on the bottom left. So we have that like light to dark effect, and it's looking up into the light. That's how I edit photos a lot of the time. I mean, it's not perfect, but I just literally searched elevator music in the art list, and that's the first song that came up, and I was like, perfect. Brought it in, done. And I think for dramatic effect, you would have noticed I don't use too many like African vibe songs in this video. I'm trying to move a little bit away from that. But going from this, let's get back to the bush. Elevator music to something epic. I just thought it was a cool contrast again. So when I make these videos, I like to have moments where I personally get like a little bit of goosebumps and the chills, which is, I mean, you think I wouldn't because I've experienced the wildlife. But this was a moment in that video that specifically gave me the chills, and it's when this music and the beat kicks in this song. It's a beautiful mistake. So I have everything in the order that it's recorded in. I don't like changing things around because I want to keep it as real as possible. And somehow, after I'd trimmed down these clips to the parts that I want to have and match them to like a bit of a beat, this is the clip that ended up being in that moment. And I was like, yes, that's it. And that's actually how I also find the music as well. So I'll search for a genre or a mood or whatever that I'm trying to find in Artlist, and I'll go through a song, go next song, next song, next song, next song. I'll just quickly click in different parts of the song, and there'll be a moment where I feel something, like something click inside me, and it's like a little bit of goosebumps, a little bit of like something happens in my heart where I'm like, that's the song, that is the song. I'm looking for those little sparks of emotion inside me, and then hopefully that translates into something for the viewer. I'll leave you with the final drive, along with the 5 things I've realized on this journey. So on the last day or two, I had been thinking, geez, I've learned so much on this trip. There's actually some very specific things that I'm leaving Kruger with here. And it would be a shame to not really highlight them because it was so important for me. How do I end this video? Very simply, I'm going to leave you with the last drive, the last sightings, and at the same time just tell you what I've learned. And you don't have to resonate with it, but if you do, then that's cool. I know it gets a little bit like wishy-washy, a little bit like on the spiritual side of things, but that's who I am. So if I can see it and feel it, that's already set things in motion.
I just manifest it.
I did bring in 1 or 2 clips from earlier on in the video just to kind of refresh your memory of what I'm actually talking about. When I'm talking about if you can see it and feel it, then it can happen or whatever. And that was literally that lion sighting where that happened. And I think the main thing I got from that was that there was really, I just had a good feeling about it, but I had no expectations. When you have 0 expectations, that's when things like just magically happen. And when they don't, you're not upset because you're not attached to it. You don't have the expectations. This little clip just takes you back to that part of the video where it's like, oh yeah, that's what he's talking about.
I just manifest it.
But here's the difficult part. To take action while truly letting go of any expectations can bring it to life. Process of discovery I never thought was possible. For that, I'm extremely grateful. Sweating. And there it goes. It's like sending your child off to school and you just hope it doesn't get bullied or treated badly. Hope it makes some friends. So this video was a bit unplanned and all over the place. So if you've made it this far, thank you very much. Please let me know if you'd like to see more content like this. And if you have any thoughts, suggestions, or questions, I would love to hear from you.